Steve Harris from White Maiden and British Lion. You're listening to Andrew McCaskey from Scars and Guitars.
G'day everybody, welcome to the show. It's with great pleasure that I bring to you a conversation with Steve DiGiorgio. Now this chat happened backstage at the Tivoli in Brisbane on the evening of Wednesday, June the 18th. Testament performed at the Tivoli last night for me as I'm narrating this. And a hell of a show. I've got to say, I reckon they're just about the best around at the moment. Right up there with Iron Maiden, I've got to say, and that's no boast. If you see them yourself, you'll know exactly what it is that I'm talking about. I'm very grateful to Steve as well for giving me his time before going on stage. It's not lost on me that he could be doing many other things, but sitting down and talking to a journalist about many aspects of his extraordinary career, he certainly was willing to go down that path. Now, I do call Sadus sadist in this chat here, so it's just one of those things that happens. You're in the moment, and you guys and gals that have been listening to the show for long enough, you know how big a fan I am of Steve, so sometimes you're just caught up in the moment or what have you, and sadist becomes sadist. But otherwise, it's a worthy conversation with the great bass iconoclast, Steve DiGiorgio. Here he is.
From last time when we had a chat, it was just such a wonderful opportunity to have a deep dive into your career. And look, I'll let you know, like on the podcast, I say you're it. You and Steve Harris, you're the two guys that we all look up to as bass players. But you really own.
There's a lot more good ones out there, you know that, right?
There is, but you wrote the book. And I've got to credit you with that, because if you weren't doing what you did with Sadus, through Death, and my feelings are that your performance on Breaking the Broken on Control Denied, that's it. That is the very upper, that's the ceiling of bass performance in extreme metal. So I've got to give you that feedback again.
I appreciate you're noticing that, because I've spent a lot of time trying to match that 25-year-old performance. Well, my age of 25 when I did Individual Thought Patterns, that's kind of what, put me on the map, so to say. And I've felt I've done some crazy work since then, but everybody keeps going back to that. And I feel like that Control Denied is, it's up to par with that album. If you really get into it, there's some crazy shit in there. It's just everybody else is playing crazy, so it just blends in. So,
but it's also the story that you shared with me years ago about it, which was that you're working in the studio. There was a Scott Burns you're working with on Control.
No, that was Jim Morris.
Jim Morris, sorry.
Yeah.
Jim Morris, yeah. And you both are working away, doing what you do, and then you called Chuck, or Chuck called you. You put the phone up to the speaker to do.
We did that every song. We would go through, and his instructions were to really decorate it, do my thing, because I worked on 7 of his 9 studio albums, some to completion, some just in the pre-production phase. So we really knew each other. So his commands were really short, because we had an understanding. So because I was supposed to really add something to it and not just fill it in, we would always check with him before we wrapped up the session, because we had the big tapes going and everything. And so we would call him up and say, listen, and he'd go, it sounds great. There's one part where there's a chorus, he's singing a lot of harmony. Can you maybe save that cool thing, tame it down there, and then save that lick for when he's done? Oh, okay, got you. This kind of working back and forth. Yeah, and then the famous moment where the song ended, and I thought it disconnected, but I could hear that, long distance, like it was still there. And then I said, hello, Chuck, you still there? And then I could hear him, kind of, and he goes, that was the best get well card I ever had. And it's just me and Jim were just like, fuck, we're just making music. We're not doing anything important. The guy was just suffering. We're just like, fuck. It just made the whole thing so heavy, But at least it was a positive comment from him.
Absolutely.
And as bad as we felt for what he was going through, I mean, it's what he asked for, and that's all we could do. We couldn't go up there and fucking cure him or nothing. So that's all we could do. So that was, it was important to me, because he was proud of what I did, and I really fucking live with that album still. I like it.
Yeah. But you mentioned 7 of 9. The truth is, you actually did work on the other 2 with Chuck, helping him When we
The
say
two-
songcraft.
The two that I didn't work on were Leprosy and Spiritual Healing. But I was
Okay, gotcha. Yeah,
rehearsing
yeah.
a Scream Buddy Gore Days, and then obviously came in for Human Individual. And then the reissues that Relapse put out and Roadrunner, they have the bonus tracks, which are the demo tracks for Symbolic and Perseverance, where you can hear my bass on the demo versions. And then obviously Controlled was a final one, and the ninth being the album that's still to this day not completed.
Mate, what do you reckon? I know that the files are absolutely fragmented to smithereens or so, but do you have a memory of the lines that you were contributing to that album?
Oh yeah, I got it in my drawer in my desk in my music room. Yeah, I got we've had the sketches of the song since he was alive. He sent us the rough demos, and you could hear him singing the guidelines on it for Tim to learn how it goes. And yeah, we have they're not worthy of releasing, and we wouldn't do that to Chuck, but we have all the blueprints ready when we do it final. It's just fucking Tim died, and that really stalled it out after all the other stalling out that's been going on. And then some of the choices that were explored before we found Tim, we were going back and saying like, well, at least Chuck asked so and so to sing on it before, so let's go back, you know. And some of these guys are just older; they don't think they have the range. It's been tough, so I really don't know. It's been one of the hardest things to complete, but it seems like over the past, what did he die in 2001? So yeah, so the past fucking 18 years, we haven't stopped trying, or at least thinking about it. You know, we haven't stopped at all.
No. So you're not against someone like, you talk about these young and up-and-coming bass players. There's plenty of these young up-and-coming vocalists and guitarists that might,
Yeah. I was talking to someone who's not fully one of us in the inner circle that would make the choice. It was somebody that's kind of on the peripheral and just ran the idea about them about, hey, what about so-and-so? And they go, oh, it would be perfect. So that kind of motivates me to bring it to the inner circle. I'm definitely not going to say who it is, you know that. But the idea of just saying like, hey, let's just make it a good album, because we're so far away now from what Chuck was leaving behind, because his parts are gone. The singer's gone. It's getting the original stuff is getting down to minority stuff. So we were like, look, either we're not going to do it, or we got to do something alternative just to get it done.
Yeah.
So yeah, we might look into someone that wasn't considered when Chuck was alive, but I don't know. Well, I've been answering this question for, like I said, for the 18. No, 2001. What was my math?
24 years, but that's okay.
24 years.
A few years in between then, yeah.
Well,
it might feel like 18 because it's going by so quickly.
Yeah, but yeah, I've been answering questions about this album, and especially when Eric Greif was meddling and buttoning everything, and he was making official statements that I don't know where he got his information from, but it was on, it was off, it's on, it's officially over, this guy's in, he's out, and it's just like, so anytime we talk about finishing this album, the answer is going to be different.
Well, there you go. But that also does lead into, you didn't do the last Sadus album, which is understandable because of how bloody busy you are as well. But a question about your career with Sadus, that was young guys like me reading Metal Maniacs, that sort of thing. That's where your name started being repeated a lot.
Totally.
Yeah, with Jeff Wagner and those great journalists at Metal Maniacs.
Jeff was behind us a lot, and we had a history with Borvoy.
Yep.
When he was really young getting started, he put out the compilation album with Marty Eager called Raging Death. Had Executioner that turned into Obituary, and Atheist was on there. That was Executioner. No, Obituary was Executioner. Atheist was on there. Sadus Demo was on there. So yeah, with Borvoy writing for Metal Maniacs, Jeff Wagner, these guys, they were on our side. They were helping us promote. They were, getting the word out there.
And you did play an album. You did record an album with your great mate, God rest his soul, Ralphie. Executioner's Return as well. Have you got any significant memories of that particular album and recording with Ralph?
Executioner's Return.
Yeah, didn't you track that one as well?
Is that an Obituary album?
Yeah, the Obituary album.
No, Obituary borrowed me for a very short European run when Terry was overlapping Obituary and 6 Feet Under.
Mm-hmm.
And the 6 Feet Under tour was, I guess, the one he chose. Maybe it was a bigger tour. And he probably had a lot to do with the idea because me and Terry are pretty tight.
Yeah.
So he called me and said, hey, come fill in for these Obituary shows. And so that's all I did. I just went to Europe and played a few weeks of shows with Obituary, but I never recorded with them.
Okay,
I've recorded a few different things with Ralph. We did Sebastian Bach. Well, Ralph played on one of those songs.
Yeah,
but we did... what did we do? I don't know. We were in a lot of bands. We were in a lot of the same bands at different times, so I have to get the timeline because he was in Iced Earth after me, and then Anyway,
but that's a good segue.
It feels like we recorded something, but not Obituary.
Copy. All right. Iced Earth, though, you did record it, and I've got to check the album. That it was
Horror Show,
wasn't it?
2001, yeah.
And so that was you made Richard Christie as well.
Yeah.
So any significant memories of working with Richard on that album?
Yeah, we had already done the well, I call it 2 albums, but the Control Denied, and before that, I went to Florida a few times to work on the Sound of Perseverance stuff in person with Richard and Shannon, and so me and Richard had a good history, good chemistry, and Jim Morris was engineering and recording everything, so there was a lot of old friends, so to say, working on it. So John Shaver was the only guy that I had to become acquainted with. He was that was the new connection, the main guy I had to get to know. But I don't know, Richard. Yeah, his drum style, especially back then, was very, very unique. There's a song, I don't know if it's the first song. It's called Wolfman, Wolf something.
Might be,
yeah, probably Wolfman because they're all the monster characters.
Gotcha. Yeah.
The song is complete double bass the whole time. There's a section where it changes tempo, goes up for a while, and then goes back down to the original tempo. And you could see on the computer Richard's kick drums were fucking accurate like a machine through the whole fucking song.
Amazing.
Just the stamina and the precision of that was remarkable. And then they pull up this kind of like slow, I guess you would call it a ballad. I don't know. It's slower paced, really soft song. And his drum parts were sliced to hell because God, he was off count. The guy could play the most intricate, crazy shit fucking dead on, and you give him a fucking AC/DC beat.
That's so true.
And it was so fucking crazy. And it just shows you that's his style was, his focus was always the extreme. He just kind of breezed through the fundamentals and went right to the crazy stuff. So when you got to just play that, and that's what I wanted to emphasize back then, because after Iced Earth, he had kind of not quit music, but he stepped away to do the radio show with Howard Stern, the big USA radio boys. And when he got the itch to do music again, he started his own band called Charred Walls of the Damned.
Yeah.
And none of that is over the top, crazy death style. He's playing power metal, and then the steadiness was there. So it was just phases for him. So so my memory was that some shit that many drummers wish they could do, he fucking nailed it in one take. And then shit that a million drummers could do, he's struggling to play this ballad.
So isn't that typical of a bloody drummer, though, as a bassist? When you're sitting there, like, something really simple where you can riff out and do your thing, they can't nail the groove, but something really complicated, like you've articulated, he's all over it.
Yeah.
It's just nature of the beast.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
What about, you worked with some magnificent drummers, Sick, The Dying, and The Dead. Now, if I'm not mistaken, that was Dirk.
Dirk, yeah.
Yeah, Dirk. Where do you rate him in the pantheon of great drummers that you've worked with?
Top 2 or 3.
Wow.
No problem.
Yeah.
It's to get to know someone's ability, you got to work outside of any singular, vacuum. You got to see how far they can stretch. And Megadeth was a very intense session. I came in very late. Everyone knows the story. I redid Ellefson's bass part, so all those guys were done. So I wasn't in a room with Dirk, but we've recorded other stuff before, and working with him is amazing. He's has this really ultra high level of absorption and learning. We did one of these lockdown video projects, when the world shut down and everybody's throwing together compilation videos. And we did a Black Sabbath cover, and I asked him to do it, and he was totally cool with it, totally nailed it. And then he admitted to me, he goes, "Yeah, it was really fun. I never heard that song before." And I'm like, it was off Mob Rules. And I'm like,
right.
What do you mean you never heard it? And he goes, "No, it's cool. I'm glad you asked me to play it, man. It was really cool drum stuff. I got to like the whole album." And I'm like, dude, I asked you to do it because, it's fucking Sabbath. I thought,
Fitting episode, brother.
But when you watch him play it, all the little fucking ghosts, the little snare drags and the hi-hat lifts and he fucking mimicked that shit. And the fact that he said, "No, I never heard it. I just listened to it and learned it." I'm like, okay, that's impressive. And then in December of 21, we went to Tampa and did a Chuck Schuldiner Memorial show in Tampa. 2 different tribute bands played, and Gene wasn't available for our Death to All lineup. So I asked Dirk to fill in, and watching him learn Sean Reiner and Richards and Gene's parts and playing them, like sometimes we got lost in the moment on stage and we're just playing, and I look back and I see Dirk with these big headphones on, and I'm like, that's not the guy. Like, wow, it was like so uncanny of how fucking dead on he nailed all those guys' stuff. So watching him absorb that stuff and playing it so exactly precise it was pretty impressive. Amongst all his original work with Scarve and Soil Work, we worked with an Argentina, a guy from Western Argentina. The band's called Geoda. Okay. It's like those rocks you find, you break them open, they're all fancy crystal. The geode. Okay. Yeah. So it's the Spanish version, Geoda, and it's just him and me and Dirk. It's a trio, and recording that stuff is fucking technical levels off the chart. So in all these aspects, in that thing, and the cover songs, and all this little side projects we've done together, I've watched him fill many roles, and I'll easily put him up in a long list of drummers I play with. Easily put him up very close to the top.
Well, just to prove the point about your standing, I know I'm sorry to use the Australian vernacular, the blowing smoke up your ass here, but just to talk about your standing in amongst bass players, I understand the story was Dave asked his son Justice, "Who's the dude? Who do I go to?" There was only one name, and that was you. So in the studio, was there a lot of to and fro? In other words, you're Steve DiGiorgio. Here you go, do your thing. I've asked Eric the same question. How much of your own thing were you able to do? And I understand there's guide tracks there, but even in and amongst that, how much of that album do you think is you?
Just 50 things hit me at once. I wasn't so naive that I thought I could go in there and reinvent Megadeth. I knew strict guidelines. I'm redoing stuff that they've already lived with. There's a lot of things that I was already preparing myself to just go in, be professional, and get it done. So it was a little bit of a surprise when Dave would come to me and say, this section right here needs a little animation. What do you got? Stretch out, show me something, play something. And there was a few times he did that. And I had kind of committed myself to just, paint by numbers and get it done nicely. And he was cool. There was some flexibility. It was cool. Like I said, it was, the margins were very tight. It was already done. It's Megadeth. They have a formula. I got my chops up with a pick to make sure that I got the sound they're used
so that's
to.
A plectrum that you use?
I used both, but majority of the time was a pick.
Okay.
Plectrum, yeah. And Dave was cool because there was some sections that were when it's just really flying fast. I had a good, you know, feel, and I could go. But when the string skipping, you know, when it starts getting, that's where I told him flat out, I'm not proficient here. You know, sometimes I tuck the pig under my thigh and, you know, get my style and get it done. And as long as he wasn't, you know, hawking me, as long as it sounded good, he'd be okay. You know, there wasn't a rule. So if it took me to do some technical stuff with my fingers and it sounded fine, it was a keeper. But once in a while, he would be like, hey, can you try that with a pick? And I would just say, man, you know, I'm not flat out proficient with this thing, and you're going to have to give me a few tries to work up to it. And he just looks at me and he goes, that's what's very admirable about you. Come in here being a almost zero pick player, and here you are grabbing it and fucking crushing through it. And he goes, take all the time you need. This is awesome. I'm watching you grow as a player, you know? Wow. So I know bass players, sometimes there's wars, finger versus pick, whatever. To me, use what gets the job done, and I always enjoy using a pick. When Sadus would play, I'd pick a song in the set list just to break one out for fun. I do it for Testament every night, so I've never been, you know, against it. So when Megadeth gig called, I was like, okay, here we go. I better get used to feeling that thing. But it's a hybrid blend of all my styles in there. But no, there was the deadline. Obviously, we had kind of come and gone, but because we were redoing something, the pressure was off.
Was that a record company deadline? Was it for the release?
I mean, they had been working on that thing for 2.5 years or something.
Yeah.
It was just like, you know, hey, how much? We got to get it done. You know, we had the bass done. Now we got to get this new guy done. And so it was just a matter of just being the most economic as possible and getting it done. But considering all that, he still created some space here and there to get some ideas from me and bounce ideas off each other. And sometimes we'd even just, you know, put the controller away and just kind of one-on-one, like, oh, try this and it was a little more creative and flexible than I thought it was, which turned out to be a really cool experience.
Did you actually, I'll preface this question with, I understand that it was never a question of you joining Megadeth. Correct me if I'm incorrect on that, because of the respect between Dave and Chuck, and you too, Chuck and Eric, of course. But did you ever have any conversations with David Ellefson, that is, about your work on the album? Yeah,
I did. I finally got him one-on-one. His band, I guess it's Dieth. It's like Die and Death. Die, you know what I'm talking about? We were touring Europe. Testament and Voivod were touring Europe, and we picked up Ellefson's Dieth, whatever. We picked them up for a couple shows as an opener, and some of the sound checks were done, and people were going out for lunch or whatever, and the venue was real quiet. And I go, Dave, come in here, man. Close the door, and I said, all right, you know, tell me, what do you think? I'm here.
Yeah.
You know, what's up? And he just, I could see how he made it through that whole, what would you call it, scandal? Mm-hmm. How he made it through that as a champ, and how he took his exit from the band the way he did, because the way he just told me how he viewed it all happening, he just had a smile on his face, and he gave me no heavy trip at all, and he's a very supportive, super fucking positive guy. I was ready for anything, and we just had a fucking awesome conversation, and we had talked about me replacing his bass line very quickly, got that out of the way, and then the rest turned into just like, hey, what about Dave's Tech Brian? He's a cool guy. Yeah, oh yeah. Hey, did you go to that, that restaurant down the street? Yeah. And it just turned into this kind of camaraderie thing, and so yeah, I was glad I did it,
it's
because
that union of bass players we're talking
I'm
about.
telling you, even in this awkward situation, and he embraces the future, man. And I was kind of inspired after that. I'm like, man, this guy had a lot hit him, and I'm the guy who came in, but he knew that, there was a big gap of time from when he was, out of the band until I came in. It wasn't this like quick thing either. So he, in his mind, he was completely done and over and gone. And then the the news about replacing the bass came out, and you know, he's heard of me through all the Testament guys and stuff, and so yeah, we had no hatchet to bury or anything. He's a fucking pleasant guy, and it was cool to finally meet him, because I know that my guys, Chuck and Alex, play with him in Metal Allegiance, and they're really tight, and it's like we should get to know each other because our bands are always crossing paths and stuff. So it was really cool, and yeah, he does a podcast now, and I'm on the schedule for like July. I'm gonna go talk to him online, and yeah, so yeah, he's a great guy, man. Yeah, it was cool to talk to him. It was awesome.
So I'll make this a final question for you too, Steve. So you've been in a ton of projects, been in many bands, you've been on the road a lot. Conflict is inevitable in these scenarios, and in this situation really where you're around people in confined spaces and travelling abroad and the like. So from your perspective, what's the most creative way you resolve conflict?
Well, that's pretty wide open. Are you talking about personal conflict?
Yeah, I'll just to share something with you. I'm writing this Cradle of Filth book, which is all conflict. Okay, and you know some bands are like that, but that band is just really, that's the way to summarise it. But you know, you've been in many situations. Yeah.
The Testament guys are veterans. I mean, they are pros with their sights on the future. So there's next to no created drama. It's about getting the job done and getting along with each other and supporting each other. So, I mean, of course, we annoy each other at certain times, you know, normal things. But I guess my conflict would be more of finding alone space. You know, when you're traveling in planes and vans and tour buses, and you know, you're at venues meeting people, and not to mention a huge audience every night, you get a little overwhelmed with the stench of humanity. So sometimes I find solace in, you know, my own company. I just like to go to the hotel room and read, or once in a while we'll land somewhere where I know someone, like an old personal friend, and jump in the car and go through a ride in the mountains and find waterfalls and search creatures, and and that was a great, you know, we stayed up late drinking a lot of beer at the end of a night where we landed at 6 a.m. crossing the Pacific. It should have been a rest and get my energy level up, but it was an opportunity I couldn't pass up. You know, to go see the countryside and see these places like Gold Coast, not Gulf Coast, that's Florida. Gold Coast. And Chillingham and all these other names I can't pronounce because I've seen them for the first time. But it's basically a rainforest, and it's amazing to be here in mid-June in the southern hemisphere and walk around in just a t-shirt, and everything is just plush green and the water's running, and it was just, I was telling my buddy Craig, who's actually sitting behind the camera over there, I want to just walk around this path that was by this waterfall and just bottle the air and just take it with me, and just once in a while it was so pure, clean mountain air that you almost couldn't feel it. It was just like air light, you know. Because you know, when you travel a lot, you get a lot of exhaust smell, you get a lot of cigarette smoke, you get stage smoke, and you know, you're breathing a lot of stuff and your body's fighting, and you go to a place like this
in the hinterland of the Gold Coast there near Mount Tamborine and Natural Bridge,
Bridge, and then just walking through these giant, majestic trees with just these decades of vines growing and adhering to these trees and ferns and everything, and just you could just feel it just go in you, you know. Just it was like a healing. I don't mean to get too deep, but I'll
tell you something off camera about what goes on around there too. But that's it from me. I just wanted to say thank you, Steve. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Nice talking with you again.
Okay, well, there you have it. A chat with the bass iconoclast, Steve DiGiorgio. I've just got to give a big shout out to my good mate, John Howarth, for organising that one again, as he did with Steve Harris and so many others that are broadcast via Scars and Guitars, but he's the only one that can make these face-to-faces, these meet and greets happen. And, it's not lost on me that he goes above and beyond and vouches on my behalf that I'm not a fucking moron, that I can actually have a conversation with these people like Steve and make it worth their time as much as it is worth my time. All right, that's it from me. My name's Andrew Mackay-Smith, and I'm the host of Scars and Guitars. Until the next one, it's a goodbye for now.